Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into something that pretty much every modern enterprise fears, but very few truly know how to pull apart: a digital disaster. We're going to explore a highly structured methodology for performing what's essentially a true digital autopsy to help you understand enterprise risks right down to their core.
So picture this scenario for a second. A customer's account gets compromised, and stolen credentials are used to drain their funds in this totally seamless digital scam. It's literally the nightmare scenario that keeps risk managers up at night. The damage is already done, and the alarms are just ringing off the hook. Which brings us to the absolutely crucial question we face in the aftermath. When a digital disaster like this strikes, how do we actually find the true root cause? It is incredibly easy to just point a finger at a phishing email, a software bug, or, say, a distracted employee. But as we'll see, that is rarely the whole story. To figure this out, we're following an investigative masterclass derived directly from enterprise risk principles. Here is our agenda for today. We're going to look at the anatomy of a disaster, introduce the bow tie framework, reconstruct our timeline, map our controls, and finally, find that true root cause.
All right, let's jump straight into Section 1, Anatomy of a Disaster, where we really focus on understanding the crash scene itself. Take a look at the vital distinction here between a risk event and a loss event. Think of this kind of like a medical diagnosis. A risk event is really just an occurrence. Maybe data gets sent to the wrong person, or someone logs in unauthorized. But a loss event, that's when that risk goes on to cause actual measurable harm, like a massive regulatory fine or financial theft. So not all risk events lead to a loss, but every single loss stems from a risk. Our whole job here is to understand exactly how that escalation happened.
Moving right along to Section 2, the bow tie framework, our primary tool for visualizing risk. I want you to imagine a giant bow tie shaped to view the entire life cycle of a risk. Right there in the center knot is your risk event, like our scam transaction. Over on the left side, we have the indirect and direct causes, along with the preventive and detective controls that were meant to stop them. Then, over on the right, you've got the impacts and the corrective controls designed to reduce that pain. Conceptually, that central risk event completely bridges the causes on the left with the painful consequences on the right. That brings us to Section 3, reconstructing the timeline, or we build a rock-solid, evidence-based sequence of the event. To do this properly, we rely on the 5 core steps of the new root cause analysis methodology. First up, establish exactly when the event occurred and reconstruct that timeline. Second, map your controls right onto the bow tie we just talked about. Third, test the control design and then test its operation. Fourth, apply the 5 whys within each control. And fifth, formulate your corrective actions. Let's actually walk through what this looks like in practice. Let's trace the causal pathway using our specific credential scam scenario. We kick off the timeline at T-2 days. This is when the credentials were first exposed in some third-party breach. Fast forward to T0, the risk event materializes, meaning the scam transaction actually happens. But get this, it isn't until T0 plus 4 hours that anomalous login patterns are finally detected, and it takes another 20 minutes at T0 plus 4 hours and 20 minutes for the accounts to finally be frozen.
This brings us to a really crucial concept: dwell time. Notice that painfully clear 4-hour gap from the moment the transaction occurred to the exact moment it was detected. For 4 solid hours, the threat actor just operated with total impunity. And as a quick aside, while 4 hours is definitely bad, the global average dwell time for a breach is actually often over 200 days. Crazy, right? But in our scenario, this specific 4-hour window is exactly the vulnerability that our control redesign has to target. Okay, on to Section 4, mapping controls. This is where we shift our focus to figure out exactly what failed. We have to break down how different controls map onto the scenario. So we've got preventative controls, like login rate limiting, which sit strictly pre-event and are designed to stop the risk in its tracks. We have detective controls, like anomaly monitoring, which can sit pre- or post-event just to identify that a risk is even occurring. And we have corrective controls, like an account freeze, sitting post-event to help rectify the impact. Looking at our timeline, the preventative controls failed entirely, and the detective controls just took way too long. Next up, we have to stress test these defensive barriers. For literally every single control, we must stop and ask, what does this specific measure stop, catch, or fix along the pathway? I mean, if our anomaly monitoring was supposed to catch the bad actor, why on earth did it take 4 hours? Is the control just fundamentally weak? Do we need extra compensating controls to reinforce that barrier? Which leads us to our final phase, Section 5,
finding the root cause through absolute control interrogation.
I want to emphasize a golden rule here, absolutely crucial to keep in your mind. You must first ask if the control was actually designed to work before you ever question its execution. Always test design first, then operating effectiveness. You see, it is incredibly common for teams to blame a failure on poor execution. But honestly, if the control was fundamentally designed poorly from the get-go, flawless execution wouldn't have saved you anyway. So to really drill down into a specific control failure, we use the probing, relentless tone of the 5 whys. Think about it like this. The control failed. Okay, why? Was it designed poorly? Well, if the design was okay, was it maybe never properly tested? Or if it was tested and a weakness was found, did management just ignore the gap? By relentlessly asking why, we peel back all those layers to identify the true root cause, which, spoiler alert, is usually a deeper governance failure, not just a technical glitch. When you apply this methodology rigorously, the final outcomes of a proper root cause analysis are just a real game changer. You clearly separate the types of causes. You address design gaps right at their foundation. You fix operating failures with precision. And ultimately, you formulate bulletproof corrective actions that genuinely prevent the issue from happening again, rather than just slapping a temporary Band-Aid on the symptoms.
As we wrap up today, I want to leave you with a pretty provocative question to take back to your own teams. When you handle digital incidents, are you truly finding the root cause, or are you just fixing the symptom? Applying this digital autopsy masterclass ensures you aren't just reacting to the last disaster, but you're actively fortifying your business against the next one. Thanks so much for watching The Explainer.